Hi, my name is Jill Brown. I'm with Freedom in Jesus Ministries, and I want to share my testimony today. Although I've never been in prison, I was in prison of my own. You know, you don't have to go to prison to be in prison. And some were my poor choices, and some were not. But thank God I was born to a Christian family. I'm very grateful for that. But my mother was sick, and she was sick before I was born. And I had two other siblings. My sister was the oldest one. She was married by the time I was born. And I had a brother that's 5 years older than me. But when my mom was sick, and then she had to end up being institutionalized when I was 9. And so I just had my brother there, but then he worked and went to school and did school activities, so I just rarely saw him. And then he got married when I was only 13. So then I was left alone by myself. And I found things to do, and most of the time they weren't the right things. My dad had been a pastor, but he had to quit pastoring whenever my mom was institutionalized. He had to get a regular job. So I was left home by myself, and I found things to do, and most of the time they weren't the right things. Got into a lot of problems, and my friends and their family became my family because I didn't have any other family around. They lived several hours away. So when I was in high school, just as I was starting high school, my father decided that we were going to move to Florida. We lived in Indiana, so we were going to move to Florida. Well, that was just devastating to me, just starting high school and not knowing anybody. And so I decided one day that I was going to run away. I was only 14. And I decided that I wasn't going to stay there any longer, and I was going to leave. And so I did. I left, I ran away, and I never went back. And but you know, God had a plan for my life. Later, I had married and thought I was in love and married, and when I just turned 18. And but after 2 years, that ended up in divorce. And so I was married a couple times after that, and finally, I was just sick of sin. And I said, there's got to be more to life than this. And being that I was raised up in a Christian home, I knew that I could turn to God. And so I started going to church. I got saved and started going, went to church, and then I got saved. And but I only gave 95% of my life to Christ because I wanted to keep this 5% back because I thought that 5% I could do what I wanted. I gave 95% to God. I thought, wouldn't that be enough? And but that 5% got me into more trouble than it was worth. So when I finally surrendered myself to God completely, gave my whole heart to God. And, he doesn't just want a part. He says, love the Lord with all thy heart, with all thy soul, and with all thy mind. So he wants all of us, and his plans are so much greater than ours anyway. And so then I met the man that I'm married to now. We've been married for 44 years this December. So you see, God can do anything. I didn't know at the beginning. I didn't know how to be a wife. I didn't know how this whole family thing works because I wasn't raised up in a family. When I was raised up, my dad did the best he could, but he had to work, and so I was left alone and to raise my own self. So I really didn't know how to family function. So even though that I got married and found my husband, things were still not smooth. I mean, for several years because I'd go into these depressions. And I didn't know why I was depressed but all those things that had happened in the early part of my years, my preteen and my teenage years, I just shoved them back in my mind thinking I had forgot about them. Well, no, those things that we shove back in our mind, that's what causes us to react. And we have to, because those things don't go away, the things that's happened to us through our lives, unless Jesus Christ, unless we give them to him and he takes them away. I used to tell my husband, well, maybe I need to go see a psychiatrist. And he said, no, we're going to trust God. We're going to believe God. And, what that does is, I'm not saying don't take medication if it's prescribed to you. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying what that does when I go that route, all that is a Band-Aid. And it's like, having a big cut on your arm and not getting stitches, just putting a Band-Aid over it. Well, it's going to come back open and cut open and start bleeding again. So you have to get to the root. There's a root to everything, and we had to get to the root of it. And I would ask God, I don't understand, God, what is my problem? I mean, I'd be like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde, one way one time, and something would snap, and I would be another way, act another way. But I didn't want to be like that. And so I was determined that I was going to change. And that's the thing about it is you got to be determined that you don't want to stay in the same state that you're in. And I was determined. And in James, the 5th chapter, it says, any sick among you, let him call for the elders of the church, anoint him with oil. Well, that's exactly what we did, is I trusted in God. And I went down for prayer every time that I had a chance. I was down there for prayer. But I thought nothing was happening, because I didn't see a change. I'd be okay for a couple days, but then I was back the same way. And so I just thought it wasn't doing any good. Well, it's like, have you ever seen an ice sculpture? Well, it just starts out with a big block of ice. And but they start chiseling here and start chiseling there. And you think, what in the world's that going to be? But when that ice sculpture, when he gets through, it is just beautiful. Like, for instance, my niece and her husband had a bride and groom ice sculpture. It was about 4 foot high. And it was with the flowing dress. I mean, it was absolutely beautiful. It was in the middle of their table at their wedding. And it was simply beautiful. And that's what God does. He takes little by little, he's chiseling, because all these things don't come into our life overnight. It just took a period of time. And God just started working. God forgives, but it's Satan that brings these things back up. So then you start feeling guilty and all that. But I tell you, just staying in there, staying in the Word. And one night I can remember that I was went down front for prayer. And, I wanted to be healed. I wanted to be totally healed of whatever all this that I had been through, how it was causing me to react. I didn't want to be depressed. And I was functional. I mean, I would cook meals, take care of my kids. I worked a job. I could do all those things. But the thing about it is, I would just close in. I would just go into myself and wouldn't talk or wouldn't, just wanted to be by myself. But we kept going to church and kept seeking God, and he started changing. One time when I went, I thought, what's the use? This isn't changing. But it was changing. I'd feel myself, I'd tell my husband, hey, have you noticed I haven't acted like this or that? And God was doing something in my life. And finally, the last straw was I went down front, and I said, God, where did all this come from? And he told me, he goes, I was there all the time. And then he started, it was just like one thing after another, like those Viewmaster that from years ago that kids used to have, you'd click, and it would show you one picture after another. Well, I'd seen one scene after another, and some of them I remembered and some of them I didn't. But from that moment on, all that depression was gone. All that time that I stayed in church and I was determined that it was going to change, it changed. And when I was a kid, I used to dream. I'd want to go to bed early so I could just dream about what it would be like to live in a brick home, to have a husband, to have children. And it happened. It happened as I get older, as I sought God. Those things happened. I used to clean house when I was a teenager, and I'd pretend that the broom was a microphone, and I'd be sweeping and I'd be listening to the radio, and it was secular music, and I'd have that broom up here, and I was acting like it's a microphone, acting like everybody was out there. I was singing. Well, that came to pass. Don't quit dreaming, because those dreams came to pass. Those things that I wanted. Don't keep pretending. I mean, I was even in a group at one time called For Him. And we sang at different places, different churches and different places. And all those things they come to pass, so don't quit dreaming. But Matthew 6:33 says, but seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not into your own understanding. In all thy ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. God had a plan for my life, just like he has a plan for yours. God's not a respecter of persons. He doesn't prefer me over you or you over me, that we're all equal in God's eyes, and he loves us, but it's how much we seek him. And he says in Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the thoughts that I think toward you, says the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you hope and a future. Then you will call upon me and pray to me, and I will listen to you. And you will seek me and find me when you search for me with all your heart. That's the whole thing, all your heart, not part of your heart. You've got to give him all because he wants it all. And it wasn't until I called out to him that my life changed. And Jeremiah 33:3 says, call unto me, and I will answer you and show you great and mighty things which you do not know. And the last thing I want to tell you, give you hope, is right here. Joshua 1:8 says, study this book of instruction continually. Meditate upon it day and night, so you will be sure to obey everything that's written in it. Only then will you prosper and succeed in all you do. God bless you.